It's no secret. Chevy, they're going to stop making Camaros here in the next couple of years. They've been outsold by their competitors and simply haven't been a priority for Chevy. And honestly, there's a lot of reasons for it that we'll jump into and dive into. However, even though the name and production is dying in the near future, I think that the Camaro will live on as a legend.
Remember, kid, there's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die. Follow your heart, kid. You'll never go wrong.
What is going on, guys? It is Austin with Gone in 60. Thank you guys for jumping into the channel. Today I want to cover a topic that I'm very passionate about, that I put a lot of time into, and I want to cover the reasons why the Chevy Camaro is dying or going to be dead here in the next couple of years, and maybe some of the missteps along the way that Chevy could have corrected. But I also want to talk about how I think this car is going to live on way past its time. It's going to be a legend. It's going to be a collector's car. This isn't a hate video. I love and appreciate my Camaro, but I want to give you guys my full perspective. So the first thing that I want to talk about of why I think the Camaro just didn't succeed is marketing. When is the last time you guys can remember seeing an ad for a Chevy Camaro or a commercial? The only two things that come to mind for me are the movie Transformers, and also the one Jeff Gordon commercial where he acted like he was going in for a test drive of the Chevy Camaro, and he just freaked out the salesman. Those are the only two things that I can honestly remember. And go get it, girl. But, you know, I think that's something where Chevy has failed, is in the marketing of the car. If you look at Dodge, in my opinion, has done the best in terms of marketing. You know, I can recall so many different commercials, ads that Dodge does. And what's really good about their marketing is it appeals to you guys. It appeals to the audience. Really, when you look at these cars, they're not necessarily a necessity. They're not a car that everybody just wants to go out and buy as a daily driver. You have to appeal to the nostalgia. You have to appeal to that inner child within everyone that wants to burn the tires, that wants to let this car eat, that wants to just fire this thing up and just smoke down the road or take it on a long road trip. That is what it is about, and that's what the marketing around these cars should be about. However, in my opinion, Chevy, and I'll also throw in Ford in there, hasn't done a good enough job in continuing to market to these cars. And it's very interesting to note, the Challenger and Charger has now overtaken Mustang and obviously the Camaro in sales. And I think marketing is a huge part of that. The next one for me, and I think this is a big one. I really think this is one of the bigger ones that I think causes people to not gravitate towards the Camaro. And Chevy is competing against itself with the Corvette. The Camaro will never, they never want to make the Camaro better, faster than the Corvette. They just don't. You know, the Corvette has been something that has been selling for Chevy for a long time. And as you look at Dodge, as you look at Ford, they don't have a competing car in their lineup. Now, yeah, Mustang have the Shelby, but those are trim levels, you know, Challengers with the Hellcats and Chargers. However, the Corvette, in my opinion, has choked off a lot of the focus for Chevy, and they've also not wanted to one-up the Corvette when it comes to the Camaro. Now, yeah, the Camaro has a backseat, which is useless. The storage in this car, not all that great. So really, when you look at it, Chevy is competing against themselves. You know, they don't want to make the Camaro stand out more than the Corvette. And as you look at Corvette sales, they're doing extremely well. And they are on back ordered with the C8, the mid-engine. They're just doing phenomenal with that car. And I think Chevy doesn't care to carry on the Camaro as much because they go, hey, we have the ace in the hole with the Camaro, with the Corvette. And they've never wanted to really put the resources, I think, fully into the Camaro. It's always been directed towards the Corvette, and because it's selling more, but they're competing against themselves, and I think that's a big part of the equation here. All right, and the next one for me, and I think this plays a big role in it, you know, as you look at Dodge outselling some of the other competitors, Dodge right now is still, you know, has been recently, I haven't checked, so don't hold me to that, but Dodge is still somewhat offering some promotions on their cars, you know, depending on the model that you get. And what I struggle with is, when is the last time you saw Chevy roll out a really aggressive promotion and offer? Yeah, the 0% interest, that happens, you know, Ford does some, but they have not incentivized buyers to get these cars. Now the Camaro, you know, for what you get for the money, it is extremely well priced. You know, the Mustang, a lot cheaper, but if you look at the Chargers and the Challengers, in a lot of instances, when you price out those cars, they're expensive, and they're honestly doing better than the Mustang and the Camaro. And so, you know, with Dodge, they did power dollars, so depending on your horsepower, you know, if you get a Scat Pack, 485 horsepower, you basically, you know, get $4,850 off the car, and in the Hellcat, $7,000. Now I know those days are gone, but I still think that plays a determining factor because we are where we're at today. However, those guys, Dodge, did such a better job with their incentives, with their power dollars. And Chevy has offered some promotions, and you could get these cars for like a really big steal not that long ago. However, at the end of the day, it goes back to the advertising. It goes back around to the branding. People know what power dollars are. You know, they're able to talk about it. They're able to identify with it. And I think for me, that's just another big determining factor, is they just didn't appeal with some of the incentives. You have to incentivize people. Now, those days are gone, and I don't know if they're ever going to come back. However, it gave Dodge a leg up on the competition. The next thing for me, and I think this is really important, Camaro has a strong following, absolutely. I don't want to throw any shade that way, because they do. They have a strong following. However, I feel another important factor in this is the nostalgia. You know, people buy these cars, you know, across all different demographics. You know, Dodge has done a good job, I think, appealing to the youth and kind of the younger generations. However, you know, people buy these cars because they remember what it was like owning some of these cars when they were younger, you know, Mustangs, Challengers, Chargers. And what Dodge has done a really good job of, in my mind, is appealing to that nostalgia. You know, the Challenger, I'm not going to comment on the Charger because it is different. There are some similarities, absolutely. But the Challenger, they did a good job in just keeping it to what it was in the past. And so they've triggered that nostalgia feeling. They've triggered that marketing. They've triggered that emotion. The Mustang, you know, they still have some components in it that I think has stayed somewhat true throughout the years. You know, their taillights, different things. But when you look at the Camaro, yeah, when they rolled out the 5th gen, there were some similarities, you know, with kind of the shark fins on the side to some of the original Camaros. So I feel they did a good job kind of starting out. However, Chevy just hasn't appealed to that nostalgia. You know, they've rolled out the Z28, they've rolled out the SS, they've kept some of the trim models the same. However, they've kind of been all across the board with it. And I do think that there are those people that buy these cars and it does appeal to the nostalgia. I'm not speaking across the board for everyone. I just think Ford and Dodge have done a little bit better job appealing to that nostalgia, you know, with you knowing what those cars were when you were younger and wanting to get one now. So another thing that I think has played a role in all of this is bad publicity. And it's really around one thing for me, and it's around the visibility of this car. People say they get in it, they feel cramped, you know, they can't see. I have had zero issues with visibility. Now, granted, it's a 2SS. I have my camera up here that shoots out the back. If you know how to adjust your mirrors properly, this car is not that bad. And yes, it is a little bit tighter, but guys, newsflash for you. It is not a muscle car. It is a sports car. It is a performance car. That's how these cars are. Have you been in a Miata lately? And yes, Miatas do very well around the track, and they're still very well received from an enthusiast standpoint. They're hard to fit into. It is a sports car. And so I think the bad publicity early on, oh, you can't see in them. Honestly, if you've spent time driving this car more than a test drive, you would realize this car actually is okay on visibility. Yes, the door sills are up higher, but I don't have any issues with it, guys. I'm sorry, but I don't. I wish I could say, yeah, I agree with that, but it's something that I don't. And so I think it kind of got a bad rap kind of out of the gate. Oh, you can't see out of them. Oh, you feel cramped. Yeah, well, it's kind of a sports car, you know, and it's not a muscle car. And those are two vastly different categories that we have to consider. The Mustang has more room than this, and the Mustang all around has the best visibility. They really do. And Mustang has done a good job blending the two worlds. I think Chevy just decided, hey, we're not going to be that. This is what we're going to create. We're going to create a performance car, and we're going to do a very good job at creating that. Last time I checked, the Corvette is doing very well, and it is on back order after back order. And last time I checked, those cars, there's not much difference in those. The space, there's even less space. And if you want to make the argument on visibility, you can, but I think the visibility on those just aren't very good. And actually, just as a Corvette just drove by a C8, that was awesome. Well timed. Another thing that I think Chevy missed the mark on is, obviously they rolled out the 5th gen, and then they introduced the 6th gen. Some people love and hate the different trim levels and models. Dodge has done a good job of making incremental changes to their cars. Ford, I think as of late, have been a little bit more risky in some of their design concepts around it. But with Chevy, you know, it started out really strong in terms of sales. They were doing pretty good, you know, still nowhere where they needed to be compared to the competition. However, it was good. But when you look at 2019 and when they did the bar across the front and they removed the bow tie and they put it into that kind of black bar across the front, that was not well received. And I think that design really started to make the Camaro trend down. And when we talk about looks and when we talk about design, if you think the 5th gen doesn't look all that much like a Camaro, which I think it has some resemblance of the Camaro, when you get into the 6th gen, that's gone. Like, and I think that played a role in it. I personally love the looks of the 6th gen. I didn't like the looks of the 5th gen at starting out, although they've grown on me a lot, and I think the 5th gen looks really, really sharp. I just think when they went to the 6th gen, squished the headlights, made a lot of changes to the car, you kind of notice things taper off a little bit. But the 6th gen was well received. However, in 2019, that was kind of the start of when they just made that debacle across the front. It just, some of you might love them out there. I don't mind them, honestly. However, a lot of people were against them. And lastly, on my last couple points here of why I think the Camaro kind of is dying, before I jump into why I think it's going to live on as a legend, because I love this car, is the personality of the car. Dodge, they make no apologies. You're getting a high torque monster, high horsepower, burn the tires, great car. It's good for road trips. It's got a lot of space. They did a good job with it, but they stuck to their formula of what it was way back in the day. You know, Dodge wasn't known early on for being like the nicest. They just made really big, huge, mean engines, and there was other cars that had better interiors, better electronics, different things like that. Now I think Dodge has done a good job, so I'm not wanting to rag on them for that. You know, Ford kind of blurs the line between muscle and performance. The Chevy, I think this car, I'm still in the honeymoon phase, but it is just such a well all-around car you can take to the track. I find it comfortable enough that I can go on road trips and different things with it. It's got plenty of power. It's got enough torque. The Mustang left me lacking for torque, but I can't really point the Camaro in a direction. You know, I can point the Challenger and the Charger in a direction, and that sells. Smoke in the tires, huge torque, throw you back in your seat. We don't care if the tires stick to the ground. In fact, we want people to burn them up. You know, I always thought it would be cool if Dodge did like burnout days, where they brought people into the dealership and whoever could do the longest burnout in one of their sample cars or whatever would get X amount off of a car. See, that's the marketing. Dodge, if you're listening, that's what I think you should do. But the Chevy, I just think it just does so many things well. If anything, I would gravitate towards this being a track car. And maybe that's what Chevy was trying to go for, and maybe I've missed the mark in understanding Chevy a little bit on it. However, I just think they just tried making it for everyone, and because of that, I just don't know if it appeals to everyone. That's just my 2 cents. I don't know if that's one of my strongest points on this, but it's just some thoughts that I've had recently. And lastly, guys, the reason why I think Camaro is dying and why I think this is going to be a trend for other cars out there, I think the Challenger and Charger will probably live on the longest along with the Mustang, but you're starting to see the Mustang make changes. They're rolling out hybrids in their next iteration of the Mustang. They are reducing horsepower. They've reduced to 10 pound-feet of torque, 10 horsepower. That's nothing really in the grand scheme of it, but it's starting, guys. You're noticing a trend and it's starting. And if you notice, and I think this is COVID, sales have dropped, but I think it's COVID. However, I think when production picks it back up, it'll be interesting to see if these sales continue. But I think it has to do with supply and demand. But my gut reaction is they're starting to decline. They really are. I just think so. But what we have on the horizon is emissions. What we have is the government stating and stepping their nose and toes, you can't step your nose, step your toes into really what these auto manufacturers are allowed to do. And it's greatly impacting us, guys, and it's going to continue to impact us unless there's a change at the presidency level. I just firmly believe that. Don't want to get political. However, they're making a strong push for electric cars, and you know, I've come around more to it. You know, I'm good with maybe horsepower of an internal combustion engine combined with electric, but that is starting to force these manufacturers to do things differently. And guys, if you're hoping for radical, huge refreshes on things, now I've heard the Camaro might be getting a Heritage Edition, maybe changes in horsepower to the ZL1, different things, which I think would be a great and welcome final goodbye. What you have to understand is where these companies are charged with coming up with electric cars, they are putting all of their R&D, all of their spend, all of their resources into that. It's not an overwhelming priority for them to continue to refresh and update the mechanicals around internal combustion engines. I hope I'm wrong, guys, but those are some of the reasons why I think the Camaro has just not lived on and it's died a slow death. But I don't want this to be a negative video. This Chevy, I think, is an amazing car and I love it. Those are just things that I'm seeing, impressions. You guys have made a well-built car that I think if people were able to drive more and appreciate more, they would realize just how amazing the car that you made, and I love everything about it. So let's jump into next why I think this car will live on as a true legend.
All right, guys, so we've talked about why I think maybe Chevy could have done things different, how they could have been a little bit more successful with the Camaro. However, I want to talk about how I think this car is going to live on well beyond its years and how it's going to be a legend. And first and foremost, and it's an obvious one, is it's a V8. They're not going to be selling V8s 5 to 8 years from now new. I just think there's a lot of restrictions coming, and it's already starting to take hold. You know, if you look at the Ford Mustang, Ford is already starting to roll out in their next generation Mustang hybrids. They're starting to change the platform that has been so successful for Mustangs for a lot of years. And it's going to be very hard to get your hands on a V8, let alone a manual transmission V8. Manual transmissions, hashtag save the manuals. However, I just think we are going to see a strong reduction. I feel it's the last stand for a lot of these V8s and manual transmissions. I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. But first and foremost, I just think with the amount of horsepower this car puts out, when you compare the exhaust, the sounds, just everything you get with this car, I just think it is going to be very hard to not want down the road. You know, because it's just going to be so vastly different than everything out there. And people are going to be seeking after V8s. They're going to be seeking after manual transmissions. I think they're going to hold their value very, very well. And if they do still make V8s, they're going to be strongly started to be restricted in a lot of areas. And something else, I think there's been a lot of misconceptions about this car. Until somebody has really owned one, drove it longer than maybe a test drive, you really learn to appreciate just how amazing this machine is. This car does phenomenal just handling. It's just an all-around just well-purposed car, and it's very well sorted. And if you look at Throttle House or other car review channels where they take this car around the track, it punches well above its weight. It competes with supercars a lot of times around the track. The looks, I just think this look, and maybe I'm biased, is just, it's stunning. I just think cars are going to be a little bit more futuristic as they roll out some of these electric movements. And I just think they're going to change a lot of the formula of what has made these cars special. I just feel this car has always been misunderstood. I can tell you guys from my experience in trying to buy this car, it may not seem like Chevy sales are very good, but what I can tell you is it is dang near impossible to get one of these cars right now. They are selling months and months and months before they even hit the dealership's lots. People are lining up for them. And honestly, anytime somebody ends a product, right? Like, hey, we're going out of business, end of business sale. Hey, we're ending the promotion on this. People flock to it and gravitate to it. You know, when you look back at kind of the early muscle car days, when they stopped making a certain model, you know, those are collectible, those hold their value, those are sought after. Maybe kind of the weird combinations that they only made a few hundred of. The 1LEs, you know, if Chevy's only selling a few thousand units a year, and if you whittle that down to what the 1LE 2SS package is, you're talking in the hundreds that were sold in that year. And so as I really look at it, I just think that pressure is going to apply that, hey, you can no longer get this car, and it's well sought after and lives beyond its years. You know, you look at cars like the Honda S2000 or the Toyota Supra, or, you know, the Skyline, or, you know, some of the special edition Shelbys, you know, like the Shelby GT350. They stopped making the Shelby GT350, but they are very hard to get and they charge a lot of money for it. So guys, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think those are some of the reasons why I think this car is going to go down as a legend, and it's still going to be sought after years and years down the road. All right, guys, so that is it. That is why the Chevy Camaro is meeting its demise here in a couple of years. Maybe they'll bring it back at some point. You never know, but I think that's why things have gone the way that they have. But honestly, it's also why I think this car will live on well past its time, and hopefully I'm still enjoying it by then. Thank you guys for watching my videos. I'm Oz with Gone in 60. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.